There's a new study out on fracking and how it affects the health of people in areas where they do it. Reuters reports, quote, people who live in areas near hydraulic fracturing are more likely to be hospitalized for heart conditions, neurological illnesses, and cancer, according to researchers from the University of Pennsylvania and Columbia University. The study, published in the journal PLOS1, looked at hospitalization rates in parts of Pennsylvania from 2007 to 2011 and found them significantly higher in areas with fracking compared to those without. The researcher said, at this point, we suspect that residents are exposed to many toxicants, noise, and social stressors due to hydraulic fracturing. Now, they make clear in the study that, there is a causation-correlation problem here, and we don't know for sure if it's the fracking that led to these things, but either way, there's a link. So where there is fracking, there are more people who get sick, have neurological illnesses, heart conditions, and cancer, and things like that. So my response is, should we really even be surprised by this? Now, I'll go the step that the study did not, because the study is strictly empirical, and they're not allowed to use speculation or anything like that, but I would say there absolutely is a link. It is a causation-correlation thing going on here. And I'm saying that because we've covered various studies in the past where people who live downwind, for example, from places where they do fracking, those places have significantly higher rates of cancer. By the same token, in Canada, in some places where they're heavy with oil refinery and where they do a lot of, I think, oil extraction, the tar sands oil, people who live downwind of those places also have higher rates of cancer. We know of anecdotal examples in the U.S. of people who have had fracking start in their towns and then they've had to move. Like, there's been family farms that have been there for generations. They had to abandon the farm and move because they were all losing their hair, and they all had horrific skin rashes and symptoms, and they were losing weight, and all these problems. And look, in some cases, it's because the toxic water, which has a shitload of chemicals in it that are carcinogenic, sometimes that actually comes through the faucet, and you're either drinking that water or you're showering in that water, and it's a problem, and that's why you have all the symptoms, and that's why you have to leave. But in other cases, again, as we've covered in the past, it's simply by virtue of the fact that the air is contaminated with all these different toxic chemicals. We've gone over in great detail, maybe a dozen times on the show, all the different chemicals that are in fracking. And it's not like, it's an open question as to whether or not those chemicals are good or bad for human beings. We know they're bad. We know they're bad. It just so happens that those are the chemicals that force up the natural gas. You can get natural gas extraction from using those chemicals, pumping it into the shale rock, and then it forces the natural gas to the surface. So it works for that, but the downside is it's fucking toxic. And sometimes it stays in the ground, and it seeps into local water supplies, and then when that happens, basically an entire town is fucked. And to put you over the top here, if you're not convinced, remember, there's a guy who's the head who works for an oil company or something like that. He's directly involved with fracking projects. Okay, he's like the CEO in charge here. When they tried to bring fracking to his town where he lives, he was like, oh, no, you're not. You're not bringing that here. Wait, you're the guy that goes around making the case to everybody. Don't worry, fracking's totally safe. You're not going to get sick. It's perfectly normal to have it in your town. No big deal. You say that to everybody else, but when they say we're going to do fracking in your town, you're like, fuck that, son. I don't want to get sick and die. What, did I say that out loud? So I think we have all the evidence we need, man. And one more thing, the final thing. We know for sure that fracking is also linked to an increase in seismic activity and earthquakes. There are areas that used to have no earthquakes, now they have them all the time. Because when you drill directly into shale rock and pump toxic chemicals down there, the fuck do you think is going to happen? It's going to destabilize a region. So there's all these different problems, and we're getting to the point now where various studies are coming out saying, yeah, it is a problem. So the answer is, at the very least, you have to do efficient regulation of it to make it much more safe. But the reality is we should really transfer over and go, full bore towards renewable energy, because that's the solution and that's what we need for the future.